Day 30. Cascade. Polana slapped another of her husband's shirts against a rock. It was wide and flat, and the strong flow here meant that it was clean of the slime that covered the stones in quieter stretches. She stood up, pressing her red hands into her lower back, looking around at the woods. The trees here seemed so much bigger and wilder than back in the home country. Her husband, Václav, had brought her to America a year ago in the hopes of finding fortune. They had set up here on the outskirts of a small mining town where Václav could hunt, fish, cut down trees, whatever might be of use to the locals. Supposedly, there had been miners in his family, but the thought of going underground terrified him. She could see a wisp of smoke a little way off, rising up from one of the mining cottages. A wife or sister would be cooking there, no doubt. Polana often felt isolated, but she had never worked up the courage to go and say hello to anyone. How on earth could she make conversation when they spoke so strangely? It was always so fast and garbled. Her husband had tried to teach her a few words around the cabin, some greetings, and when he spoke she could follow, but out in the wild, no chance. She imagined the woman in that cottage, perhaps alone like her, perhaps with a child or 2 or 3. Václav had pinned his hopes on raising a family here too, but so far they had not been blessed with a baby. She prayed for one every night. She prayed she was imagining her husband's sadness. She heard a burbling, a human burbling. Resting in a nook on the upstream side of her flat rock was a baby. A bright pink face was looking up at her from inside a strapped basket. "Mojžiš!" she cried. "Chvála Bohu!" It was a miracle. The baby wasn't so sure, and on seeing her, creased its face and cried back. She threw her arms into the water around the basket and lifted it out. The weight of it and the water gushing out from underneath meant the baby must have been wet inside. She rushed it back to the cabin and started unwrapping the sodden cloth next to the fire. Polana discovered this was no Moses in the bulrushes, however, but a girl. Knowing not who she was nor where she came from, Polana found she was simply referring to the little baby as Darcha, her little gift. After padding her dry, Polana took one of her own neatly folded blouses and fashioned swaddling around Darcha, which quieted her. She heated some milk a little way off from the hearth and dipped a clean handkerchief into it. Little Darcha sucked on the corner of the cloth with a look of determination. Her little eyes closed, her mouth went still, and Polana found herself rocking back and forth, aware of nothing in the whole world but for the baby's rhythmic breath. The door burst open. It could have been hours. It could have been 5 minutes. "Christ's sake, woman, there's bloody laundry all over the riverbank. What have you been—" Václav's mouth hung open. Polana looked up at him, a wide grin spread between rosy cheeks. "God brought her to us," she whispered, by way of explanation. Václav clomped over and put a filthy hand on the baby's head. His eyes darted up and down between the two. "I don't understand." "She came floating down the river, like from the Bible." She could barely contain her excitement, and yet felt dead tired, all at the same time. Václav's expression was grave. "A baby has to come from somewhere," he murmured. "From someone." "We'll see," said Polana, not meeting her husband's eyes. "I'll have to inform the sheriff," he said, after some time. "Well, it's much too late for that now," said Polana. She was relieved to see him take off his boots and braces. The next morning, Václav woke at dawn and promised to tell the sheriff about Darcha when he took his wares into town in the afternoon. Polana's heart hurt, but she knew there was no point arguing. He was right. This beautiful girl must belong to someone, and if they were only to have spent one day together, so be it. God would know what to do. That day was sublime. Polana carried Darcha out into the wood and showed her everything around their home. She fed her warm milk and even tried a little soaked bread. Darcha bubbled and spit and laughed, and Polana thought she might burst. It was wonderful to have someone to speak to freely, other than Václav. All too quickly, though, he was home, and he was angry. Not only had no one lost a baby, the sheriff and his goons had laughed like jackals as Václav tried to explain what had happened. At first, they had tried to take an interest, but by the end, were having far too much fun mocking his mime acting for the words he couldn't quite remember in English. Polana wasn't sure, but she thought it might be the best news ever. Václav looked over at Darcha once he had calmed down. At the moment, she was fixated on a carved wooden spoon that he had made, both little fists wrapped around it, brow furrowed. He walked over to her, and she looked up at him. This must have been the biggest person she had ever seen, and she broke into a smile and giggled. Václav took a deep breath. I can't see any safer place for her than here. He brushed her cheek. Our little Darcha. Polana squealed. The river had completed their family, had brought them what they had prayed for. But the river was to bring other things too. As days turned to weeks, the water cascaded by, flowing through a dream in the little cabin in the woods. Until one night, when some men came knocking. "Banner Beta Tau!" Polana heard one shout as he thudded on the front door, shocking them all from their sleep. Václav held a finger over his lips as he went to the door. The men outside barely waited for him to open it before pushing their way in. The two at the back were filthy, with long beards and all sorts of litter caught in their worn clothes. The one at the front was far more well-groomed. His boots were dirty, but clearly expensive, his dark jeans giving way to a bright red waistcoat, separated by a wide belt and 2 matching pistols. He had a thick moustache, but it was neat, and despite the intrusion, he had even taken his hat off, though it seemed it was mostly to run a hand through his long hair. Then he pointed at Darcha. "I'll be the Noir's Armasaus," he drawled. Václav's hands hovered in front of his hips. Da nauna je tomba," tried Václav. "The baby meow my fish bird." The word baby stood out like an icicle, and Polana scooped up Darcha. "Václav, what are they saying?" "He says Darcha's his. These are dangerous men, Polana. I can tell you they don't live in the town." The intruder slapped Václav across the face. "I speak English! English!" Polana was furious and stepped forward. She was going to make him understand. "If this baby is yours, where's her mother? Mother?" She shielded her eyes with her free hand and looked around the room theatrically. "Mother? Matka? Where?" The man smiled. Then he drew his thumb across his throat.